All right. I'm Peter Alessandria, and for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's take a look at our agenda for this evening. As always, we're going to start off with some announcements, then we'll do our recommended reading, our affirmation of the day, then we'll do some introductions, victories, and celebrations. Then we'll do our audiobook excerpt from my book, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are, Chapter 6 tonight. We'll come back for our topic discussion, take a break at about 8:15. Then we'll come back and work on our assignment for tonight and do our questions and answers, and then wrap it up by 9 o'clock. Reminder that today's workshop is being recorded and will be available on the BeBiggerToday.com website and YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Please feel free to stop your video and mute your microphone if you do not wish to be seen or heard on the recording. Be Bigger Than You Think You Are, first edition, author-signed paperbacks. Still have a few of these available. Use workshop 20 discount code at checkout at BeBiggerToday.com/book, and I will sign that book. It also comes with a 100% money-back guarantee. If you don't love it, you just let me know and I'll send you your money back, but I know you're going to love it. And while you're there, check out my New York City photo book, New York Cityscapes. This is the ultimate New York City photo book. It's a collaboration between myself and 6 other New York City area photographers. We each have our own unique take on the New York City skyline and the Big Apple landmarks and icons that make the city so great. And I think what's really interesting for me is that we each, even though we all photograph most of the same locations, we all have our unique take on it. So none of the photos look alike, even though they're the same landmarks. You can get it for $16.95. It's on sale right now at BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore. And the audiobook for Be Bigger Than You Think You Are, author read. Getting close, folks. I'm actually going to send out the current version to some friends for them to listen to give me some feedback this week. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll finally have this wrapped up and ready to go. Right now it is available for pre-order at $9.99. It's unabridged, over 10 hours of material. Get your copy at BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore. Comes with a full money-back guarantee. If you don't love it, just let me know and I'll send you your money back. But guess what? I know you're going to love it. And while you're at my website, check out some hats and t-shirts. Use the discount code MERCH20 at checkout to save 20% on our unisex t-shirts and one-size-fits-all baseball caps. Also, check out my original art and abstract photography. Or abstract art and photography. I have some original, professionally framed, signed, limited edition prints available of my landscape, my original landscape photos, my original cityscape photos, and my abstracts. They are available at BeBiggerToday.com/art and photography. And here's a little
Peter's photos and abstract designs are uniquely beautiful, one-of-a-kind works of art. These gallery-wrapped canvas prints are set in a contemporary shadow box floating frame and will enhance the beauty of any home or office. Available in 4 different sizes, each piece is professionally framed and comes complete and ready to hang. Frames are available in your choice of black, white, or brown, and each is signed by the artist. Peter's original art and photography will make a great gift for a client, for yourself, or someone you love. Order yours today. Each piece is professionally.
And while you're there, check out my New York City refrigerator magnets. These are part of my New York City souvenir collection, my original photos. Right on your refrigerator. Check it out. And these are available at BeBiggerToday.com/merch. Finally, I'm available for one-on-one coaching and or corporate consulting. If you're a creative person, an artist, a photographer, a writer, or if you have a business or work for a business and you have a sales team or a management team and you would like me to speak to them about how they can be bigger than they think they are, reach out to me through the website at bebiggertoday.com. And finally, I am accepting donations. I'm looking for support to continue to offer the workshop at no charge and keep it open to everyone. We have a suggested donation of $5 per week or $20 per month. You can send your contribution directly to me at paypal.me/Peter Alessandria, all one word. Thank you so much for your support. All right, so why don't we jump right in with our recommended reading for tonight. So this is another book that I read back in the day, and somebody that I followed for a long time, really enjoyed her work. The book is Loving What Is, 4 Questions That Can Change Your Life, written by Byron Katie. This book was originally published in 1994. Byron Katie is very well known in the self-help community, in the 12-step community, and I'm sure other places as well. Wonderful, wonderful woman, great work. And in fact, her work is called The Work, and you can find out more on her website, which is thework.com. And as I said, I think I first read this book probably in the late 90s, and if I'm not mistaken, I think I actually did a workshop with her at one point, although there was a time in my life when I was doing a lot of different workshops, so I don't remember every one of them. Her stuff is available on YouTube as well, in other places. And the cool thing about this book, so these are the 4 questions. This is the work. Now, what's really cool is she has on her website, if you go to thework.com, there is a tab that you can go to. It says how to do the work. And there's actually a drop down that is a PDF of, it's kind of a worksheet that you can use to apply this process, her process, to any challenges that you're facing in your life. So first we look at who angers, confuses, hurts, saddens, or disappoints you and why. And then next is, what do you want the other person to change? What do you want them to do? Next, you answer, what advice would you give that person? He or she should or shouldn't do this or that. Next is, in order to be happy, what do you need him or her to think, feel, say, or do? Next, what do you think of him? What do you think of him in this situation? Make a list. And what don't you ever want to experience again with this person? So this is kind of the written, you kind of answer these processes, these questions, write out your answers, and then you apply the 4 questions to them. So the first question to ask for each one of these, A through F, question number 1 is that true? And then if you're not sure, number 2 is, can you absolutely know that it's true? Now, you guys have heard me apply this in my work when I talk about beginning to become more conscious, more aware of our negative thoughts and beliefs about ourselves. When we become tuned into the negative programming that runs our lives, and we form these ideas and beliefs about ourselves that we just assume that that's the truth about us. We never stop to question the idea that I don't have what it takes, nobody's going to like me, this is not going to work out, this is going to be really painful, I don't know what I'm doing, and so on. And I always say, number 1 is you got to catch those thoughts, become aware of them. And then number 2, and I've done this, I stop everything I'm doing and I say out loud to myself to interrupt that flow of negative thinking, is that really true? How do I know that that's the truth? Maybe that's just something that I've been telling myself and for many, many years. And if you know law of attraction, they say that a belief is just a thought that you keep thinking. So when I keep thinking these negative thoughts over and over and over again, at some point they take on a belief, they become a belief, and I never question them again. I just assume that's the truth about me. So what I love about Katie's work is she has these 4 questions. So the first thing you ask is that true? Second, can you absolutely know that it's true? Number 3, how do you react when you believe that thought? Now again, this is really important. I've talked about this over and over in terms of my work. We want to understand that it's our thoughts that create our emotional reactions. What I think creates what I feel creates what I say and do, and what I say and do leads to the outcomes that I experience in my life. So when I think a negative thought, how do I react to that thought when I believe that it's the truth? And obviously if I have a negative thought, chances are pretty good I'm going to have negative emotions. If I have negative emotions, I'm going to have negative words and actions. Negative words and actions, I'm going to experience negative outcomes. Question number 4, who or what would you be without that thought? All right, so again, this is really important. This is beginning to question who we think we are. This is beginning to question all those thoughts and beliefs that we have about ourselves that are not serving us, and actually being willing to say, gee, if that's not who I am, then who am I? If that's not the truth about me, then what is the truth about me? And I've been saying since the beginning that we get to decide that. We get to consciously and deliberately choose thoughts, feelings, words, and actions that serve us, beginning with our thoughts about and ideas about ourselves. Who we are, what we're capable of, what we deserve from life, what we have to offer the world. We get to decide all of that. We get to choose that. And the more conscious and aware we are of the thoughts that are not serving us, and the more we question those thoughts and beliefs, the better chance that we have to tell a new story about who we are, what we're capable of, what we have to offer the world, and what we deserve from life. So I love these 4 questions. We can apply them. You can do her worksheet, or as I said, if you're working right now from my book and you're aware that there's a negative thought that's coming up that says, I can't handle this. So let's say that you have a challenging situation, there's a challenging personality in your life, and you're going to be interacting with that person, and leading up to that interaction, you have this idea in your head that says, I can't handle this person. I'm not going to be able to handle this. This is going to be painful, this is going to be unpleasant, and there's nothing I can do about it. Boom, right there. Begin to be aware of those negative thoughts and beliefs. And then question that. Is that really true? Is that the truth of me? Is that who I really am? How do I know that that's the truth? And is that thought about me serving me? Is that thought about the other person serving me? And is there another way to look at all of this? Remember, we have the ability to choose. That's true power. True power is the ability to consciously choose and or change our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions so they start to serve us instead of work against us. All right, so once again, highly recommend Byron Katie's book and her work, which is actually called The Work. Check out her website. She has a couple of other books that are really great too. She also, as I said, I think there's a bunch of YouTube videos that you guys can check out, see if you like her and her work. All right, and our affirmation of the day. So, I have enough, there is enough, I am enough. Now, I love this affirmation. And so, for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the ego and the effect that our ego and our egoic thinking has on our lives. And one of the foundational principles or foundational beliefs of the ego or thought processes of the ego is that there's not enough. It's this belief in scarcity. There's not enough time, there's not enough love, there's not enough money, there's not enough to go around. And ultimately what all of that is saying is that I'm not enough. And of course we have this belief about ourselves which says that we're not good enough, we're not worthy, people are not going to like us. This whole idea of, am I worth being loved? That's an idea of the ego. And it's based in scarcity. In our case, scarcity of value, of worth, of lovability, likability, capability. So we want to begin to counter-program that. And as I say, that's for me, affirmations are a great way to reprogram, especially the subconscious or unconscious mind that is often filled with negative thoughts and beliefs about ourselves, and that can run us in a way that can ultimately sabotage our life. I mean, you know, if I walk around all day saying I'm not good enough, I don't have enough, there isn't enough, you know, that will eventually play out in all areas of my life. You know, there won't be enough time, there won't be enough money, there won't be enough people to love me, there won't be enough people for me to love, you know, whatever the not enough in your life is. So we want to begin to reprogram that. So this is something you can say, driving in the car, you know, doing the laundry, making dinner, whatever. I have enough, there is enough, and I am enough. So that's our affirmation of the day. All right, so this is the portion of the workshop where we do celebrations, victories, and introductions. It's an opportunity for people who would like to say hello and share what's going on. Or if you're brand new and you want to introduce yourself to the group, just unmute your microphone and take it away.
Hey, Peter. Hey, everybody. It's Dee Dee. So I'm at work and I'm going to scan this view because I secured this position. I've been working with you since you've been having your workshops, you know, since July. And this is, I want to tell you, I'm at work and I have this view and I just, it can only get better from here. I have no idea what I'm in for, but I'll keep coming back. I can say I have a best friend who is a Byron Katie facilitator. And oddly enough, I have a situation at a different clients that where I could really use some help with a certain personality. So thanks for the reminder. Maybe I'll give it a try. Thanks. Pass.
Awesome. Thank you, Dee Dee. That's a gorgeous view. I'm actually a little jealous, so good for you. And yeah, Byron Katie's work is great. You know, she's a legend in certain circles, so check it out. Who else wants to say hi? Share a victory?
Hi.
Judy.
I can't usually get here on time, but finally. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Good to hear you, Dee Dee. Nice to see you, Barb. You know, my old, I feel like friends, you know, but anyway, I guess, you know, we're going to be opening our business. We have a launch date, which is huge, April 26th. So it's coming real soon. Doing a lot of work on copy. I do a lot of editing of it. And then also the things that I think I've made strides in is I've had to do some videos, I had to do a Facebook ad, which isn't the greatest, but it's out there somewhere in Facebook land. But just videos that I'm more comfortable with, you know, ad-libbing and anyway, that's huge. And the other huge thing is I did some role playing today. And if there's anybody who hates to role play, it's me. I mean, I'm like this. And anyway, I did a really good job. I didn't know I would be doing it, but I did it. And we're actually going to end up doing that on one of the days of we're doing a 5-day challenge. And, you know, we're going to be ad-libbing role playing, you know, in 3 different scenarios. And anyway, that was huge for me. So I consider that, you know, being way bigger than I am.
Awesome. That's so great. I love to hear that, Judy. You know what? If I can mirror back to you, it sounds like you're proud of yourself. And I think that's great.
I am. I mean, this is so it is so out of my hula hoop. Let's put it that way. It's just not, you know, I mean, I'm doing things today that I never, ever thought I would be doing. And I think it's giving me a lot more confidence to just keep moving forward because, you know, I don't have to be perfect. You know, I mean, I'm working on that because I'm so fear-based and I just have to, I'm walking through the fear and just doing it. And one day at a time, just doing it.
Okay, do you feel like, so what's the biggest difference between now and say 5 years ago? Within yourself.
5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought of going back to school to become an quote unquote expert, not that I'm an expert, but on food addiction or sugar addiction. And even when I did have the opportunity to do that almost, I think it's 4 years ago, Cindy, 4 years ago, I think it's 4 years ago. It took me until like this past year to like decide to do something with it. It's huge. It's absolutely beyond, beyond my comprehension that I'm doing this. Like it's an out of body experience, so to speak. But now that we're kind of getting into the fun stuff, I mean, writing copy is a lot of work, getting all this stuff out there. But now we're doing the fun stuff, which is, about food and sugar addiction. And not that I don't remember a lot of stuff. That's just my brain, but I've lived it. So I can start using what I've lived and giving it to people. And that's exciting, because I'm passionate about, there's so many people out in the world that need what I have to offer. So.
Great. Well, it sounds like you're giving a gift to yourself too. So I want to acknowledge you for that. It's like part of my spiel and what I'm passionate about, and what I like to help other people with is to move past their self-doubt or their lack of self-confidence or whatever you want to call it, and share their gifts with the world, because we all have something to offer. Everybody has something to offer, and there's so many of us, I believe, and my perception is there's so many people who never end up sharing the gifts that they have been given to share in this lifetime because they feel not good enough. They feel nobody's going to like them. They feel like they're going to fail and it's going to be painful and they're not going to know how to handle it. They're going to be rejected. They're going to feel ashamed or whatever. So I love it, when people are stretching their comfort zone. That's the title of the book, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. It's our thoughts and beliefs about ourselves that in the most cases hold us back. And self-limiting, exactly. And that keeps us from sharing with the world. That keeps us from inspiring the people in our lives that would be touched by who we are and what we have to offer. So I love that, Judy. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. I can't wait to see how this unfolds. It's exciting.
Well, we haven't even put out one email yet, and we have over 104 people signed up.
Wow.
Whether they come or not, but the point is, it's just amazing,
Wow.
And tonight we opened the private Facebook page because people have been saying, well, I can't get into it. So anyway, we decided to just open it up and, at least we'll look at it. There were 39 people signed up for that already. So that's cool.
Awesome.
We'll see. There's certainly a need out there if you look around,
Good.
Processed food industry has done a good job on all of us.
All right, great. All right, keep us posted. So glad you made it tonight. And I'm sure more will be revealed, as they say. So good job. Thank you. Anybody else want to say hi or share a victory?
I'm here. I'm going to say hi. Hi, Judy. It was nice to see you. No victories. What you're saying is wonderful. I just do one day at a time. I just try to get through my day.
There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, there is. It's what I'm going through. I probably never did this, or I shouldn't say I probably never did. I never did. I was always in the past or in the future. I was never in the moment. So there's the victory. Okay. So all you have to do is talk about it. I just need to be day to day working on my stuff and liking myself. And you do see, when you're in a good place, everything you do, the people you come in contact with and everything you do is good.
Good.
So, yeah, that's a good victory.
Good for you.
Thank you. Woohoo! Thanks.
All right, great. Thanks, Barb. Anybody else? All right, so let us launch into the workshop for tonight. So we are carrying on tonight with Chapter 6, Would You Rather Be Right or Happy? Still a few more weeks on this chapter. And actually tonight we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, a topic I'm very well versed in, and that is anger. And I actually was going to try and do it all in one night, and I realized I have so much to say about this, I'm actually going to split it up into tonight and next week. And as you'll see in a minute, there's a direct correlation between our egoic mind and the emotion, the expression of anger. So we're going to talk about that. So we're going to start with an excerpt. It's only about 6 minutes from the audiobook from chapter 6. And then when we come back, we'll get into our topic discussion.
Anger. Anger is a primary egoic reaction. Our ego always has to be mad about something. Emotional, physical, and/or psychological discomfort are usually our justification for being upset. Anger is almost always born out of seeing ourselves as victims. It comes from seeing other people, circumstances, conditions, etc. as having power over us. We perceive these things as depriving us of something we want or forcing us to do something against our will. Of course, we now know none of this is possible. Yet until we take full responsibility for our feelings, there's very little hope of avoiding anger. Anger can take many forms, ranging from mild annoyance to physical violence and rage. Who we think we are when we're angry is threatened, vulnerable, powerless, etc. We usually resort to anger either to protect ourselves or to make someone else feel guilty, or both. In many cases, the message behind the anger is, "I'm upset and it's your fault." Some less obvious forms of anger are sarcasm, gossip, character assassination, and certain passive-aggressive behaviors. Resentment is a form of anger where we harbor negative feelings within rather than outwardly expressing them. As resentment simmers, we plan all the ways we're going to get back at the other person, yet we usually end up doing nothing, or if we do, it's passive-aggressive in nature. For many people, myself included, anger can become a way of life. Looking back, I see that I leveraged anger as a way to feel safe in the world. Because I usually saw myself as a victim, expressing anger became second nature. Yet what if anger does more harm than good? What if it's an expression of weakness rather than strength? And what if the thing we're angry about is really a made-up fiction in our own minds? Consider what A Course in Miracles says about anger. It says we're never angry at a fact, but rather at our subjective interpretation of that fact. This jives with what we've been saying in that we react to the internal meaning we give a particular situation rather than to the situation itself. But the Course goes further. It says anger is never justified. To the ego, this is blasphemy of the highest order. Once again, as an exercise in self-awareness, notice what your reaction is to reading that line. Yet the reason anger is never justified is because we just said we're reacting to our own subjective interpretation of the situation. What's upsetting us is how we see ourselves, not what's going on around us. Footnote 54. Actually, the reason A Course in Miracles says anger is never justified is a little different. The Course says everything we think we see in this life is an illusion. Thus, anger is never justified because what we think is going on is not real. This life and all the people and events in it are a dream. More about all this in my next book. Back to the text. If this is tough to swallow, it's probably because many of us equate giving up anger with giving up protection. Most people rely on some form of anger to take care of themselves in challenging or difficult situations. Thus, the prospect of giving it up arouses great fear in the ego. Yet I can say for me, the more I don't respond with anger, the better my life gets. Again, I'm not saying we shouldn't protect ourselves, but I do think it's important to look at how and why we use anger and whether or not it's serving us. For instance, if it's true our reactions are based on our own subjective interpretations of a situation, then it might make sense to question those interpretations before we react to them with anger. In addition, I notice the more I change how I see myself in a positive way, the less hostility I feel towards others. It's only when I perceive myself as weak or vulnerable or threatened that I respond with anger. What if it's possible to protect ourselves without having to resort to anger? In the next chapter, we'll talk extensively about using boundaries to take care of ourselves in our relationships. I've found that in my own life, in many situations, having healthy boundaries almost completely obviates the need for anger. I will agree the issue of expressing anger may not be entirely black and white. Yet I'd also say that we're looking at, and if you made it this far in the book, I assume you'd agree, how we can better handle difficult situations in our lives. In many cases, responding more effectively means rethinking our negative emotional reactions such as anger and exploring more positive ways to deal with challenging situations when they do arise. It's not personal. As we've already noted, a hallmark of our ego is that it takes everything personally. This is because, not surprisingly, the ego is egocentric. It makes what other people say and do about us, even when it's not. The ego is potentially offended by everything and anything, and this becomes a huge catalyst for our anger. How could you, they, it do this to me is a familiar refrain, thought or spoken, when the ego is in charge. From here, it's usually a short step to anger and maybe even retaliation. While what other people do may affect us, it's never about us. We know from Chapter 3 that everything a person thinks, feels, says, and does is a reflection of how they see themselves. Moreover, in the last chapter, we said everyone's choices and decisions are motivated by their own internal reference of what will feel better in a given situation. This makes those choices about them, not us. The sum total is nothing that comes to us from another person is personal, even if it's meant to be personal. All this is true even if the other person attacks or intentionally inflicts harm upon us. Of course, once again, this is blasphemy to our ego. How can someone attacking us not be personal? In the next chapter, I'll describe my experience of dealing with attacks against me and my photos on social media. I'll give a couple of examples where, by not taking those attacks personally, I was able to transform the situations from something negative into something positive. I'll admit it can be very difficult at times to not take the things other people say and do personally. Yet I know when I can do it, I'm able to see both them and me in a whole new way. As always, the key is to question how I see myself in those situations that challenge me. The truth is, we can take this so far that instead of reacting with anger when people attack us, we can respond with love and compassion.
All right, so there's the audiobook for tonight from chapter 6, talking about anger. So I have a lot to say, as I said, on this topic. But let me just start off by saying we're not bad people, we're not wrong, we're not defective if we experience anger and if we express anger. And, you know, this for me falls into the category, again, if you're familiar with 12-step recovery, we talk about character defects. Some programs, they talk about survival strategies. And anger falls into that category for me as a survival strategy. It's a defense mechanism. It's a way that I try to take care of myself when I don't have another way to do it, when I don't know of another way to do it. And in many cases, for me, I learned the hard way, you know, being on the receiving end of other people's anger, but that's all I knew. And I didn't have my toolkit in terms of tools and options and strategies was quite limited when it came to taking care of myself in difficult situations or with difficult people. So everything that we say, or everything I say tonight, I just want to put it in that umbrella that, you know, it's some people consider anger a natural emotion, and it may be that. But the thing I also want to say is I found that for me, there are alternative ways now for me to take care of myself. I've found other methods that are more effective. And next week, I'm going to give you it's actually something that happened to me over the weekend where I applied this stuff in my own life and I didn't reach for anger. I reached for something else, which I'm going to talk about next week, and I had an entirely different outcome. You know, it was almost miraculous, quite honestly, the way it worked out, because I didn't reach for the anger pill. I didn't go to that place of justified anger, even though I think it was pretty clear that I was placed in a really almost dangerous situation by somebody else's carelessness and inconsideration. So I'll talk about all that next week. Let's jump into the first slide for tonight. As I said in the reading, anger is the primary egoic reaction. Our ego always has to be mad about something. This is the lifeblood of the ego. Justified anger, superiority, making other people wrong. Remember, the title of this chapter is Would You Rather Be Right or Happy? Making other people wrong, judgment, condemnation, superiority, and justified anger. This is the lifeblood of the ego. All right? So whenever I feel justified in my anger towards another person, whenever I feel superior to them, whenever I feel entitled to attack them or make them wrong for who they are, that's the ego. Anger is often about getting even. Anger is often about, you did this to me, so I'm entitled, I'm justified in doing this to you. That kind of thinking starts wars, quite honestly. And, it could threaten, especially in this day and age, it could threaten the survival of our species if it goes far enough. So our ego always has to be mad about something. Anger is based in fear. Really important, the relationship between fear and anger. Again, I'm not going to talk about it tonight, but I want to plant the seed that there's a very specific relationship between fear and anger. Talk all about that next week. So anger is based in fear of loss, damage, or injury. We usually resort to anger either to protect ourselves or to make someone else feel guilty, or both. In many cases, the message behind the anger is, I'm upset and it's your fault. All right? So, again, I can only speak for myself, but I see this in other people. When we feel threatened, when we feel powerless, when we feel like we're going to lose something, whether it's some kind of loss, injury, or damage, anger is this response that many of us have, and it's an attempt to set a boundary, it's an attempt to protect ourselves, it's an attempt to stop somebody from doing what they're doing, which is about to or has already caused us harm or injury. As always, we're not making excuses. Whatever I say tonight or whatever I say in these workshops, I'm never making an excuse for somebody else's inappropriate or unloving behavior. We don't have to just take somebody's bad behavior. If we truly are being injured or damaged by somebody, it's okay to do whatever we have to do to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves. I'm not for a minute questioning any of that. And as I'm finding out in my own life, there is often another way to deal with those challenging situations. And, as I've been saying from day one in the workshops, we're never actually reacting to what's going on around us. We're reacting to the meaning that we give that situation based on how we see ourselves. So I have to say, for much of my life, I was angry most of the time, and I wasn't even aware of it. I was always annoyed by what somebody else was doing or not doing. I mean, a great example is just driving on the highway. I was always angry because somebody was either driving too fast, too slow, in my lane. There was just all these reasons why other people were upsetting me. And I'll tell you right now, looking back, it had nothing to do with those people or that situation. It had to do with how I saw myself. And I recognize now that I spent a good part of my life walking around thinking I was a victim, walking around feeling powerless, walking around feeling unlovable. The highway is a great example. If somebody's driving too slow, they're keeping me from getting to where I need to be, and they're creating a negative. Their behavior is having a negative impact on me in my life. Now, again, it's not to say, in some instances, those people probably were driving too slow, especially in the left lane where I like to drive, but they still weren't the cause of my anger. Nobody makes me feel anything. There are some people who, when they come on a driver, and this is actually who I am today, when I come up on somebody who's driving too slow in the left lane, instead of getting right up on their rear end and, tailgating them and sending all these negative vibes, I just go around them and get on with my day. I don't have to be upset. As we're going to talk about in a minute, I don't have to take that personally. I don't have to make them wrong for who they are in that moment. There are other ways for me to take care of myself. All right. So what was also interesting when I first started to look at this was, there are many different forms of anger. Anger is not just yelling and screaming in somebody's face. So what I call active forms of anger are annoyance, frustration, yelling, sabotaging ourselves or other people, physical violence, either against ourselves or others, aggressive behaviors. Again, the example I just gave was aggressive driving or road rage. Those are all pretty obvious expressions of anger. It's interesting, I didn't realize that things like annoyance or frustration were expressions of anger, but for me they are. So in addition to, yelling and screaming and all of that, feeling frustrated, feeling annoyed by somebody else's behavior, that's a form of anger, and especially when I act out on that. More passive forms of anger are resentment, and we're going to talk a lot about resentment in Chapter 7 when we talk about forgiveness. I've already mentioned this a couple of times, resentment, if you ever read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says that resentment is the #1 offender. And in my life, that's true. So passive forms of anger are resentment, sarcasm, gossip, character assassination, passive-aggressive behavior, obstructionist behavior, such as intentionally misleading, blaming, or confusing other people. Those are all expressions of anger. And it's my contention that in 9 times out of 10, none of that serves us. There are other ways to deal with challenging people and challenging situations. For me, expressing anger is equal to an attack, whether it's passive aggressive or active aggressive. It's an attack, and it's a sign of weakness, not strength. I think we can be confused, especially in certain segments of our culture, where we think expressing anger is somehow an expression of strength. And it's my opinion, other people probably feel differently about it, but it's my opinion that ultimately that's an expression of weakness. Because what we're doing is we're giving our power away. In many instances, when we're really angry, we're out of control. And when I'm out of control, I'm out of control. I'm not in control of my thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. So as I've talked about from day one, if we don't control our emotions control us. And true power, I said this a minute ago, I'll say it again, true power is the ability to consciously choose and or change our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions, irrespective of what's going on around us. Irrespective of what they're doing and not doing, irrespective of what's happening or not happening. It's an internal decision. All true power decisions are internal, arbitrary decisions vis-a-vis the external world. I don't make a choice based on what I think you're doing. I make a choice or decision based on who I want to be in that situation. That's how I create my life. Consciously and deliberately determining, choosing who I want to be in this situation. And again, it's not to say that other people don't have an effect on us. It's not to say that what's happening around us doesn't impact us in some ways, but it's my contention at least that the external world becomes the stimulus for us to make a choice, but the nature and quality of that choice is our internal decision. It's our internal choice. And it's always based on who we think we are, how we see ourselves in that situation. I always say the situation is never the problem. The problem is always and only how we see ourselves in that situation. And it turns out that's really good news, because it's often much easier to change who we think we are than it is to change the external events and circumstances of our lives, especially if the external events and circumstances include other people. So this is a call to consciousness. This is a call to deliberateness. This is a call to being aware in the moment. And I always say, a great tool that I've used, that I've shared with you guys, is setting an advance intention. If you know you have a difficult meeting coming up with somebody, if you know you have a difficult personality that you're going to be dealing with, plan ahead. And that could mean role-playing, calling somebody up on the phone and saying, gee, I got to talk to this client, and he's often very difficult personality, very hard for me to negotiate with him. I want to practice with you. I'm calling you up now. I want you to be him and I'll be me. Let's practice. Let's role play that scenario. So when I call him later or have the meeting with that person later, I'm prepared. I know what I'm going to say. I know what I want to achieve. I've set an advanced intention. I know what outcome I want to experience at the end of that phone call. And when I have an advanced intention, my thoughts, feelings, words, and actions align with that intention, and I'm much more likely to achieve the outcome that I want to achieve. But if I get into that scenario, that situation with that other person, and I'm immediately gripped with fear, if I feel powerless, if I feel overwhelmed, if I feel like, I can't take care of myself, then I may resort to anger, or I may resort to sarcasm, or defensiveness, or some passive-aggressive form of behavior, or whatever, because that's the only way I know how to take care of myself in that situation. All right? So again, my opinion, I know other people may feel differently. Expressing anger is a form of attack and is a sign of weakness rather than strength. By the way, I don't know if that little graphic on the slide is an angry bird. I thought that was pretty fitting. All right, and then the last part of the discussion for tonight, again, I mentioned this in the reading tonight. The ego takes everything personally. If you want to know whether or not you're operating from your egoic mind, pay attention to whether or not you're taking things personally. Whether or not you're feeling offended by somebody else's words or actions, whether or not you feel slighted, or whether you feel they dissed you or they did you wrong, and you're taking it personally. So it's my contention that it's not personal. Nothing is personal. Even if it's meant to be personal, it's still not personal. And the thought to be aware of, you may say this out loud actually, how could you, it, they do this to me? How could you do this to me? How could you do this to me? Don't you know who I am? This is so unfair. Don't you love me? How could you do this to me? All right, the minute that thought pops into your head, that's ego 101. That's ego land right there. So again, there's nothing wrong with that. But as I said in the audiobook tonight, and we want to find more effective ways of dealing with the challenges in our lives. And for me, at least, taking things personally, reacting with anger, whether it's passive-aggressive or aggressive, that has not proved effective. That has not brought me closer to people. That has not resolved conflicts and differences. That has not led to intimacy in my relationships. That has not created trust and mutual satisfaction in my relationships. So all of this is about beginning to do things differently. So it's not personal. And so what other people say and do is always an expression of who they think they are, not who we are. That's why it's never about us. But the same is also true of us, our behavior with vis-a-vis other people. How I behave towards somebody else is always an expression of who I think I am, not who they are. But in my mind, my mind says, well, I'm doing this because you're a jerk. It's your fault that I feel this way. And I have all these ideas in my head that says I'm justified in acting or reacting this way. So we want to be aware of that. We want to be conscious of that. And again, in I don't know, next week, but in chapter 7, I'm going to talk about how by not taking attacks, people attacked me and my photography on social media, in particular Facebook. They attacked me publicly over my photos. And by not taking that personally, I created a whole positive, miraculous outcome in those situations. And I've alluded to one before with the way the souvenirs came about, my New York City refrigerator magnets and all the other souvenirs that I have with my photos on them. That came from me not taking an attack against me personally. I actually befriended the person who publicly ridiculed me. I got to know that person, I befriended that person, and it turned into a 5-figure license deal for me and my photos on New York City souvenirs. So I know it's possible to have a different reaction, a different outcome, a different experience when I don't react, when I don't take things personally and I don't react with anger, when I don't react with resentment, when I don't want to hurt somebody and get even with them because of what I think they did to me. And in one of those particular situations, it was never about me. The comments that that other person was making about my photography, he was really talking about himself. He was projecting his own issues onto me and my work. So it's right there. It was never about me. Even though it was meant to be personal, it was never about me. It was about him. And again, I've mentioned this before, I always tell my 14-year-old niece, I said, whenever somebody is saying something mean to you, they're always talking about themselves. It's not about you. And I try to apply that now in my own life. So this is the way not to take things personally. And then we go to the next step. Now the next step is chapter 7, forgiveness. So we're a few weeks away from that. But without this understanding that it's never personal, that I don't have to react with anger, that I can change how I see myself, and when I change how I see myself, nobody has the ability to hurt me. Nobody has the ability to negatively impact me, to offend me, to upset me. I can stand in my own power. All right. So we're going to take our break. Oh, let's look at our assignment for tonight, the exercise. Anger is never justified. Agree or disagree, and why? All right, so we're going to take our break, 5-minute break. If you're new here, I'm going to play a song. It's called Love My Life by Robbie Williams. I can't actually play it on YouTube, so you have to go listen to it yourself, but I'm going to put the lyrics on screen during the break. And then when we come back, we're going to jump into this exercise and also do our Q&A for tonight. All right, we're back. Gotta love that song, guys. So again, our assignment for tonight, anger is never justified. Agree or disagree why, or anything else that you want to talk about from the topic discussion from earlier tonight. And again, I just want to emphasize that this definitely falls under the category of easier said than done, or simple but not easy. But I also see this as for me at least, I have been repeating patterns and behaviors and using coping mechanisms and survival strategies that they probably never served me, and they're definitely not serving me now. And so, and I'm getting a little older. I mean, if there's ever a time that I'm going to make some changes in my life, this is it. And so looking at these patterns, looking at these choices, looking at these behaviors, and looking at the foundation, the root of them, and then redoing all of that is what's up for me. So hopefully this is helpful for other people as well. So who wants to kick us off tonight with our discussion on anger, maybe how it plays out in your own life, that kind of thing?
Dee Dee does. I just want to say, of course it was justified, because I didn't have this training. I really wish I'd had more. I wish I'd had this exact and precise training when I had to deal with my dad's wife during hospice, because it was a disaster and it could have been different. So, if I live my life with no regrets, I just say I have the training now, and I will have when we get past chapter 7, and doing the work, with discipline and actually doing the exercises, so that next time, there won't be a next father, but there will be a mother, and there'll be different situations, and I can do it differently. I know, because I believe in everything that you're saying. I believe that that's all possible, and I can step aside when I feel the anger. I can know that I need to, do the work. So God bless, and I'm just so grateful. So is it never justified? I think if you haven't done this work, it's justified. There you go. Pass.
All right, great. Thanks, Dee Dee. I just want to mirror back to you that I hear your willingness, and for me, I always say, willingness is just another word for courage. And as I mentioned in the audiobook tonight, and I think I mentioned earlier, in many cases we rely on anger to protect ourselves. So asking us to give up our anger, it creates all kinds of fear in the ego. Because now what? How am I going to take care of myself? And again, there are people who are really inappropriate. There are people who are potentially harmful to us. I'm going to talk next week, talk more about, anger. There are other ways to set boundaries with people that don't involve anger. And that's primarily what we're trying to do in many cases, is set a boundary with another person or people or situations to protect ourselves. And in chapter 7, we're going to spend a couple of weeks in chapter 7 talking about how to have healthy boundaries, so we don't need anger to take care of ourselves. And then, the big thing is it's how do I see myself? If I think somebody has the power to hurt me, if I think I'm vulnerable, if I think I'm threatened, and if I think there's nothing I can do about all that, then you know what? Anger probably is justified, because I ain't got anything else. I ain't got nothing else to use to protect myself in that situation. But often, you got to remember, anger often goes beyond just protecting ourselves. In many cases, again, I'll speak for myself in my own life. In many cases, when I used anger, it was more than just to set a boundary with somebody. I was trying to get even. I wanted to hurt them the way that I thought that they hurt me. And I'm not proud of that. And if I look at it and tell the truth about it, it was more than just setting a boundary. It was more than just protecting myself. I wanted to hurt them the way I thought they hurt me. So that's what we want to be on the lookout for. We want to be aware of when we're going beyond just setting a boundary, beyond just taking care of ourselves, where we may not even be aware of it, that we're trying to inflict harm on the other person because we feel like we're justified in doing that. They did it to us first, they started it, whatever. So for me at least, anger is often about way beyond just taking care of myself. It's about getting even. It's about, hurting somebody else because I perceive them having hurt me and I feel justified in that. All right, who else? Who else wants to tell us about your adventures with anger?
Hello. I've had adventures with anger, but since you've been talking about being better, bigger than you are, exactly what you said. The anger doesn't have to be there. It's a wonderful thing. That fire, that horrible feeling that comes up when somebody, you feel like somebody is hurting you, or, see, if you're in a place where what we are is working on yourself, it all has to do with my reaction, not what they're doing. So, but it's funny that you mentioned one thing, and I used to say I have a difficult time with difficult people. And that was always my saying, because it seemed like a lot of difficult people could come into your life. And with those people, you're going to have a difficult time. I didn't have the tools on how to work with a difficult person. And, I used to say that after the fact, but it made sense to me, and it's actually kind of cute. Now the difficult person, like you said, I don't know if the word is diffuse it. When you're in that difficult situation, you just, you try to work on yourself. You try to, help yourself, calm yourself. It sounds terrible that we have it. I shouldn't say terrible, but it sounds like that's a shame that we have to do that. But that's how it works. Correct?
I think so. Yep. I agree.
Okay. And I don't, I guess I'm not angry anymore. I mean, it's there. It probably is there. And oh my goodness, if it ever comes, I don't want it to come out anymore. I don't want to be angry anymore.
Well, that's also part of it, making the choice, saying, you know what, I don't want to be that person. I've had this experience now, several times recently and for a while now, where it's like, I know I don't want to be angry in this situation, but I don't know I don't know how else to be, so I'm learning as I go. That's where we're going with this. That's what chapter 7 is about. It's the how to be when we don't want to be angry anymore.
Okay. And I can totally understand that. It does seem like a bit of, I don't know, putting yourself on mute. You just sit there and you don't react. I don't know. Eventually, I guess it gets better. Because I wasn't angry.
Well, what about reacting with compassion rather than condemnation?
Right. Sure. Like I said, I think I told you I work with somebody who's difficult, but I'm going to work with her. I don't care about her difficulties. Her difficulties don't bother me. I'm just doing my job. And, I told you that's how I feel my day-to-day is right now. And that's a shame, but it's, it is the way it is. No, I don't have to feel compassion for her. No, I don't have to feel anything for her. I just have to do my job, and I do my job with her, and she's good, and I appreciate her competency and her, whatever she does, and that's it.
What if, so this is my next book.
I don't want to be her best friend. Why?
What if I'm probably getting way ahead, but what if the people who are in our lives for a reason?
Okay.
And what if the people who are in our lives, there's some much bigger picture going on here. And so it's not random. And we're here to help each other learn lessons. We're here to help each other be bigger than we think we are in a much bigger sense, in a spiritual sense or whatever. So maybe, look, this is going way beyond the scope of what we're here to talk about tonight. But, look at it. Jesus said, love your enemies.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So can I love my enemies if I'm reacting with anything other than love, compassion? But I have to see myself differently to love my enemies. This came up this weekend, guys. I'm going to share about it a little bit next week. But, I really came face to face with this idea of it's not what the other person is doing or not doing. It's how I see myself in this situation and who I want to be in this situation. And do I want to be somebody who attacks other people who are attacking me because I feel justified in that? Or is there another way to handle that? And is there a reason this person is in my life? And is there, what's happening? I think about myself. When I attack someone else, forget about what happened to me this weekend, but when I look at my own life, when I've attacked somebody for something, I was usually not in my right mind. I was usually not in a good place. I was usually not in a place of serenity, or I didn't feel safe. Remember, the two core questions that most of us face at various times in our life: am I safe? Am I loved? If I don't feel safe, Course in Miracles says, frightened people can be vicious. So what if the person who's attacking me, or when I was attacking somebody else, what if I was really, terrified? What if I'm not a bad person? I was just really afraid, overwhelmed, confused. If we start to look at other people that way, when they're being who they're being, and if we begin to see ourselves differently, in that people can't really hurt us unless we give them that power to hurt us. Now, again, I'm going to say this for the millionth time. If somebody is attacking me physically or whatever, then I get out of the way. I call the police. I defend myself. I'm not saying we don't take care of ourselves, but most of us don't face those situations on a regular basis. It's a more subtle, there isn't necessarily physical violence or the threat of violence. I'm looking at it as if I can see myself differently and I can see the other person differently. And when I do that, it diffuses the situation in a way that was never possible before. So we're going to talk a lot about this in chapter 7. This is kind of at the heart of forgiveness. As long as I see myself as threatened, vulnerable, a victim, it wouldn't make sense for me to forgive the other person if I really was threatened, vulnerable, or a victim in that situation, because then I would just be setting myself up for more harm. But maybe that's not who I really am. Maybe the idea that I have about myself is not really, remember at the beginning of the workshop, I said, we've got to look at those thoughts and beliefs that we have about ourselves, and the ones that are not serving us, we got to question them. Is that really true? Is that really true about me? And then learning, having new tools in our toolbox when it comes to dealing with difficult people. I have a toolbox now that has the wrench and whatever else I need to undo the difficult people in my life. And I don't have to hit them over the head with the hammer or whatever. Not always, and I don't do it perfectly, and I'm definitely a work in progress. I still sometimes would rather be angry than do any of this shit, so I'm not holding anybody up to a standard that I'm not achieving myself. And I think most of us at this point in our lives recognize that there are perhaps better ways to deal with certain people in certain situations, and that we don't necessarily need anger to protect ourselves.
No, and you use the word diffuse, and that's what I mean. I mean, I'm getting very good at diffusing. All of a sudden, something brought up something. I must have gotten her mad, or a challenge came up, and I think for about, I don't know, a good 45 minutes, she banged and clanged and and it was, but it was almost comical. No, I shouldn't say comical. Like you said, compassion. I didn't feel anything for her. I knew she was pissed off. for her own self, because I guess I challenged her. And I mean, I recognize that that's the difficult person. And I just let it go. I just diffused it. She bang claimed. And I shouldn't say she got over it, because then something was brought up and we were able to resolve it. And that was good. And that's what I feel like I'm saying to you. I feel like that's my whole life. That's my day-to-day thing, working. It's only two people in an office. And if one's difficult, I don't know, I'm sure she'd say I'm difficult too. But if one is difficult, it's your day. You got to get through it.
Well, yeah, you gotta get through it. Yeah. But did you always make that choice?
Right. But, there's more to getting through it. I want, like I said to you, I go there now. I do my job. I want to like my job. I want to be, helpful to people, whatever the job entails. And if she can show, if she's been there for 16 years, if she can help, she's there to help me to learn. So I will learn from her. And her challenges are her problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the other thing. Her life is none of your business, not your job to fix her, not your job to fix her, not your job to help her, not your job to, beyond your job description, and all of that. And if there's something bigger going on, maybe, there's something for you, both you guys to learn.
Okay.
And, somebody who has to bang around the office because they feel so powerless and so frustrated.
I know. I almost felt bad for her.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's having compassion, because what? I've been that person. It's not a happy existence. Somebody who's banging around the office is not a happy camper.
No, she's not. Right. I know.
Now we can either be gleeful about that and say, you deserve it, you witch, whatever.
Right.
Or we can say, or we can move beyond it and say, okay, this is another human being who's suffering.
I think I did that. I wasn't gleeful. I wasn't, I took no pleasure in her uncomfortableness or her problem. No, I didn't. I let it be. I think, I just did. The perfect word for that one was diffuse. I just diffused, and it resolved itself.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
That's progress. And I'm as far as I'm concerned, that's great. And if that's as good as it gets, that's great.
Right.
And, I'm just thinking ahead to the next book. There might be something that's not obvious. And, the people who challenge us, Course in Miracles says, our enemies are our saviors. They're the people who are going to get us to heaven.
Yeah.
Those people are in our lives for a reason. And you don't have to look further than that. And we have lessons to learn. I never believed this, but now I'm seeing it more and more. We at a spiritual level, at a much higher level, we have agreements with people. We have contracts. We have and we have opportunities to be bigger than we think we are spiritually with the people who challenge us. So if I could see if I can have compassion for somebody who is so out of their mind that they have to bang around the office or they have to attack me for my work, or on Facebook, it was so interesting for me to have a moment of clarity, which was when this person was publicly attacking my photos. The basic claim is that they're Photoshopped, they're not real, he's not a good photographer, he's just, it's all fake. Very publicly proclaiming that about me and my work. And for me to say, you know what? I have a choice as to how I'm going to respond to this person. And I've tried the other way, which was attacking back and, lashing out and doing that whole thing. That never went very well. Maybe there's another way. And when I went down the other way, it led to some very miraculous things. It was so interesting. So this person was in my life to give me an opportunity to be bigger than I think I am in terms of my spiritual development, in terms of my personality, my maturity, as a person. So I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Barb, I think it's great that you were able to diffuse that you were able to maybe have a little bit of compassion for this other person, that's great. And if that's as far as you get, that's perfect. And, maybe there are other opportunities there.
I'm sure there will be. I don't doubt it. I'm sure there will be. And that's okay. That's what life is.
All right, good. Great. Thank you.
What do we say? Challenges or opportunities? Are they both the same?
If you look at the Chinese alphabet, I think the symbol for crisis is also the same symbol as opportunity.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, that's an answer. That's a good answer.
Other people want to chime in? Thanks, Barb. Somebody else want to talk about our topic? Cynthia?
Yes. Hi. I have a beautiful sky, don't I, Albuquerque?
Gorgeous.
50 years ago, I was a rager. I mean, literally, I was just enraged by so many things. I mean, I just had no capacity to do any of the things you're talking about. That was my only emotion as I experienced it. And over these 50 years, literally 50 this month, I have used 12-step programs of various sorts, spiritual processes, reading books, the Katie.
Oh, I think we lost you, Cynthia.
Sometimes
You cut
hear
out.
me or no? Oh, it's
All right, now
it's
you're back.
am I back? So anyway, I changed over the years, many years. It took a long time to change, but it's still that when I've had experiences in the last few months where someone, my mother is and my mother has dementia. So, whatever her experience is, that's what her experience is. And I do have compassion for her. And at the same time, it triggers something within me, the lying. You're lying. And recently, I had another situation where I was very provoked. I was provoking, and the other person was provoked. When a circumstance came up where it was essentially the same thing, that the person was saying, what you're saying is not accurate. That's pretty close to your lying. So I respond still in a very heated way to that. And I don't respond so much to all of the other things that used to be, but I'm still connected to that. And it's one of those things that I will continue to work on, continue to pray to have God remove it from me, continue to strive to avoid circumstances where my being right, quote unquote, my experiencing my truth. Another recent one was that, I've read on the National Institute of Health that at 1992, there was an abstract there that said that if you put alcohol in food, that the alcohol doesn't cook out, that it takes hours and hours of cooking to do that. And I read recently a sommelier that said, I think that's the word, that said it takes 2.5 hours for that to happen. And then there's still 5% of the alcohol in it, and it will go down, but you have to keep cooking for hours and hours to go down incrementally. So I believe I'm correct and accurate in that. And I, as an alcoholic, don't want people to misunderstand that putting alcohol into food is okay. It's not okay for alcoholics. For other people, maybe a little alcohol doesn't hurt. Smooths the joints, whatever. Makes the conversation easier, sex easier, whatever it is for them. But I, as an alcoholic, I want people who are otherwise addicts of all sorts to know that that's the case with adding alcohol.
Well, that's great. Thank you. So, but I just want to be clear. So the point, the challenge for you is being, I'll just use this word, accused
Honest.
of being incorrect or
Mhm.
or fabricating
Mhm.
or whatever. That's
Yeah.
a trigger.
Well, they say it straight up mostly, like you. No.
Right, right. So
Mhm.
we can talk more or less about it if you want, but for me, it's like I have to remember that when I have that kind of reaction, because it's usually because of my own self-doubt, my own
Hi.
insecurity kind of thing. So,
Mhm.
and as I change that, like now, if people comment on my photos on social media or whatever, I don't feel that anymore. I would turn red when I first started posting on Instagram and Facebook, and people had something. And listen, 90% of 95, 99% of the people love my work, and they're great and they're wonderful, and I love social media, which is even worse because then it was just one person out of 100 would say something negative, and I was so livid. I was so, how dare you? How could you accuse me of that? How could you say that about me? Now I don't even care. It's a
There's
non-issue
hope.
because I no longer see myself. I no longer am afraid that that's true. I'm no longer afraid that I'm not good enough. I'm no longer afraid that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm no longer in my own mind. I don't have those thoughts about myself anymore. And so when somebody else says something negative about me, it doesn't trigger me because it's not part of my. Remember, I don't know if you were here last week, but we said, the ego reacts, is offended, is reactive, reacts with anger when it secretly believes that what the other person is saying about us is true. So when I begin to shift that, and I no longer carry that negative self-image or the negative baggage about myself, who I am, what I'm worth, what I'm not worth, what I'm capable of, what I'm not capable of, then I can let what other people say be about them, and I don't have to take it. Remember, the ego takes everything personally. So if I'm reacting, if I'm taking comments personally, whatever, I'm in my ego. Now, the other thing I want to say, and then I want to hear what you have to say, but let me say one other thing before I forget. Again, I don't want to take this away from anybody because in many cases, it's all we have is our anger. And there are people in our lives who are inappropriate. Again, I had this experience as recently as 4 days ago. There are people, and I have been, in my relationships with other people, inappropriate. I have done things that were unacceptable, that were unloving, that were unkind, that were harmful to other people. And I'm not saying we shouldn't react with anger if that's all we got. I think this is what kind of Dee Dee was saying earlier. In those situations, anger is justified because I ain't got anything else. I don't know how else to take care of myself. And what that other person is doing is inappropriate. All I'm saying, and the other thing is, too, many of us, I was so reactive because as a kid, I didn't have any defenses. I didn't have any protection. The people I needed to protect me were the people that I needed protection from. And they're not bad people. They weren't bad people. They were just people, and people have issues. But so I didn't learn another way to navigate those difficult interactions with the adults in my life. So it's all I had. And if it's all we have, then it's okay to use that if that's all we have, and we really need to protect ourselves. But what I'm suggesting is, number one, maybe we don't need as much protection as we think we do, because we can begin to change the scenario in our head. We can begin to reprogram the negative thinking that allows us to be triggered. The other thing I say is, other people may trigger me, but other people may push my buttons, but if I'm being responsible for my life, I have to own my buttons. Those are my buttons. So taking responsibility for my side, for my part, begins to recognize that, those are my buttons. Doesn't make what they're doing right. It doesn't make what they're doing appropriate. None of that. And what they're doing does not have to determine or dictate how I react, how I respond, who I am in that situation. True power is when I decide in each and every moment who I want to be in that situation, and I express that. Otherwise, I'm just giving my power away, and I'm out of control. My emotions are controlling me. I'm letting other people trigger me. I'm letting other people, decide the quality of my life for me, which is a terrible way to live. All right, what else do you want to say, Cynthia?
So true. From the spiritual perspective that you acknowledged a little bit ago, there's that piece that says to me, I really want to resolve the things with the people in my life today, because I don't want to take that same problem into the next life and the next life and the next life. And some of these people have been in my life over and over and over again. My mother, for certain. So I want to resolve, to the degree that I'm capable and competent to do so, these things in the grander scheme, the universal scheme. And I so appreciate this class, Peter, because you reiterate those elements that make it possible for me to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that's going to be one of the messages, the main messages of my next book. So and here's the thing: even the greatest challenges are not so difficult if we believe that we're capable of dealing with them. So it's the difference between, I'm screwed, whether on a physical level or a spiritual level, versus, all right, this may be difficult, this may be challenging, but I can figure this out, I can do this, there must be another way. There has to be another way. If you read A Course in Miracles, know the story behind it, apparently that was the trigger. There was two people who were at each other's throats at Columbia University in the psychology department there, two psychiatrists, MD psychiatrists, who were at each other's throats, and one person said at a certain point, there has to be another way to deal with this, to deal with our problems. And within a few weeks, the Course started coming through to them. And so it's willingness to see things differently. It's willingness to see other people differently. We have, I can go on and on. So I'm going to stop there. So thank you so much, Cynthia. I totally get it, and I love your clarity and your honesty. So thank you for sharing that with us. Anybody else want to chime in? Talk about anger.
Thing.
Go ahead, Judy.
A couple of things is thank you everybody for what you're talking about. And I'm falling asleep here because I slept so poorly because of something that happened yesterday, which is could be related to anger, and one, the word compassion, pops in my mind because I did something to offend somebody yesterday, or I think I did, because they kind of walked out of the situation and left. And I did say, happened to be my daughter-in-law, and my son, I said to my son, is your wife upset? And he goes, well, yeah, I guess so, or something, one of those deals. And I don't, feel that I did anything really terrible or wrong. And so this morning, I talked to a friend, and I actually wanted to call her last night, but I knew she was tied up with the kids. And when I got up looking, I was editing some stuff, and it was already like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I had to go to bed, and I knew that it was too late. She doesn't pick up the phone. She's a texter, so it makes it really hard. So this morning, after talking to somebody, I did call, and I left a message. I didn't think I'd get her, and I just said that, you walked out of the room abruptly, and I was wondering if I said or did anything, that offended you. And if I did, I'm sorry, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. I said, because I cherish my time with their kids and with them, and that I love them.
Got it.
That all made sense or not?
Yeah, I understand. My heart goes out to all the mother-in-laws out there. Believe me, that's probably not an easy job, easy role. But I love what you said about compassion. I mean, that's kind of where. It's not to say that if we can't get there, we can't get there. Totally okay. And if I can begin to see the people in my life differently, and instead of again taking things personally, it's like, wow, they must really be having a bad day or feel really bad about themselves or whatever. I don't even know, and it's not really my business. But they must be in a bad place to have to respond to me that way. And I can also look at my part in the situation. Sounds like that's what you did, which is great. Take responsibility for my part, reach out, and then it's out of my hands, and can I begin to see myself and other people differently? And this is, I'm jumping ahead to next week, but here's the thing. When we're angry, we're really afraid. It's so clear to me now. And so when I begin to see people as frightened, and when I begin to see myself as frightened, and when I begin to tell the truth about that, when I can say to somebody that I want to wring their fucking neck because of what they did or didn't do, when I can reach out to them and instead of doing that, I can say, gee, I was really afraid, and I'm really concerned, and I'm really worried. When I tell the truth that I'm afraid, as opposed to, remember, anger, for me at least, is usually an attempt to blame somebody else for how I feel, make them feel guilty, get back at them, get even with them. When I communicate from, again, I'm getting way ahead because I wanted to talk about this next week, but when I can say I'm afraid as opposed to I'm angry, I'm not blaming. When I say I'm afraid, I'm not blaming them, or not as much. And when I'm not blaming them, they don't get defensive. We talked in chapter 5, I think it was, we talked about defensiveness, or chapter 4. Defensiveness begets defensiveness, and anger begets anger. So when I'm defensive or when I'm angry, guess what's going to come back to me? But if I can move from that place to a place of, wow, so I know now that that fear always precedes anger. So if I'm angry, I'm really afraid, and if I have the courage, and if it's safe enough, it may not be safe enough, but if it's safe enough to admit to the other person that I'm afraid, that I'm worried, that I'm concerned, and it happened this weekend, guys, and it was a miracle. That, approaching it from that place opened a door of communication which has been closed for 6 years, and it led to a miracle that I would have never expected, because instead of accusing them and attacking them, and I can tell you now, I would imagine that 9 out of 10 people would agree with me that this person was acting inappropriately. All of that aside, by just keeping the focus on me, saying, I was afraid, I was really concerned. This is the effect that your behavior had on me, without attacking them, without making them wrong. And in fact, I offered to be helpful. I actually said, I have experience with these same emotions. I've done similar things in my life. And I've done this and this and this in my own life, and it's been helpful for me. So instead of attacking, revenge, blaming them and all, making them wrong, I expressed that I was afraid, that I was concerned, that I was worried, and I offered to be helpful. And it was a completely, 6 years of animosity and all this other stuff was transformed in a moment. And it was a miracle. I don't know how else to put it. But I knew I couldn't go the old way with this situation. I knew I could not, as right as I was, remember, the ego is always right, which means the other person is always wrong. When I put that aside and said, well, and I prayed, how can, and it's not a little ironic that I'm working on the second edition in the audiobook, because at that moment, when all of this shit was hitting the fan, I was working on chapter 6 or 7, and I was in it. I said, and I had never had that experience before. I said, when you communicate that you're afraid, as opposed to communicating with anger, it opens the door of communication with the other person, and it's much more likely that you can find a resolution to the problem. All right, anyway, thank you, Judy. That was great. You want to say anything else? Thank you for sharing that. You good? Okay. Anybody else want to say anything? We're way over time. All right, guys, so that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to continue our discussion with anger, about anger, and chapter 6. And anybody want to say anything? Oh, it looks like Fred joined us. What's up, Fred?
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
There you go. Now I can hear you.
I'm going to try to join you next week. I couldn't because of the conflicts, but I also passed your number on to somebody else who is a big fan of yours.
Oh, great.
The
Awesome.
information. Okay.
So yeah, we're hopefully we'll see you again soon, maybe next week.
Yeah, I will plan to be in there next week.
Awesome.
Okay.
Great. Great to see you, Fred.
Good to see you.
Anybody else want to say anything before we wrap it up? Everybody good?
Yes, thank you. It's good to was able to be back mostly present.
All right, great.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks,
Yes,
guys.
good night, Peter. I just thought about it. The last thing of that song says, I'm where I want to be. So let's just say everybody is exactly where they want to be today.
All right, sounds good to me. Where
Good
I want
night.
to be. All right, guys, so remember, be bigger than you think you are today and every day, and I will see you guys next week. Have a great week. I want to hear all about your victories. Take care.
Bye, Peter.
Thank you.